So here are the answers to the factoring problems. Don't forget to take out the greatest common factor first and check. Difference of squares, that problem hasn't changed. Sum of squares is now where you pull out the GCF and then factor with the imaginary value. Okay? So now we're going to move on to solving with imaginary numbers. Okay, so our first example is x squared equals -9. So before yesterday, we wouldn't have known what to do with a negative value, because when you take the square root of both sides, you end up with a negative, and you can't do that. Well, now we know that we can pull the I out. So when you take the square root of a variable squared, you end up with the absolute value. I now know the square root of -9 is 3i, so then x equals plus or minus 3i. And there you go, there are your two imaginary solutions. Okay, same thing. If you have a coefficient or something in front or along with this squared term, you do have to make sure that you isolate your squared term first before you square root. So then this problem is very similar to the last one. Take the square root of both sides. The absolute value of x equals 5i. X equals plus or minus 5i. Okay, so let's kick it up a notch, and we will do the example -2 times x plus 1 squared minus 3 equals 29. So remember that you have to isolate your x squared term before you can take the square root of both sides. So I'd like you to go ahead and pause this video, answer it, and then start it again to check your work. Okay, so here we go with our answer. Once you have the absolute value, the squared quantity isolated, you take the square root of each side. You end up with the absolute value of x plus 4 equals 4i. And don't forget, when you solve absolute value, you have to set it equal to the positive and the negative. So here are our two answers, -1 plus 4i and -1 minus 4i. You can go ahead and leave it like this or combine them with a plus or minus symbol. That's up to you. Okay, one more example, and then after this you guys can get started on your homework. X minus 3 squared minus 5 equals -25. So again, pause, solve it, and then come back to check. Okay, so here we have the answer to this problem is 3 plus or minus 2i root 5. So you're completing this problem similar to the last one, except this time you didn't have a nice perfect square under your radical. So don't forget to put that into reduced radical form and then solve your absolute value equation by splitting it into the positive and the negative answer. I kind of lost some room over here, but it is a -2i root 5. Okay, so we know how to factor and we know how to solve with imaginary values. So go ahead and get started on your homework, and we'll keep talking about this tomorrow.